strategy that I came up with.
And I really don't know if I'm still here.
We're going to call this meeting to order. This is the regular business meeting number 9 for Pasadena City College, and today is Wednesday, February 19th. And we're going to start off with the roll call.
Mr. Osterling?
Here.
Mr. Hilsman?
Here.
Ms. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Chen Lao?
Here.
Dr. Fellow?
Here.
Mr. Martin?
Here.
Ms. Hua?
Here.
Mr. Sarkeesian?
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment on closed session agenda items, Trustee Brown?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. We are going to recess to a closed session, and in that closed session, we are going to discuss Government Code Section 4957, Public Employee Appointment, Custodial Supervisor, Facilities and Construction Services, number 1. Number 2, Government Code Section 54954.5E, Public Employee Discipline, Dismissal, Release, 3 employees. Number 3, Government Code Section 54957.6A, Conference with Labor Negotiators, Agency Designated Representative is Robert Blazinski, Assistant Superintendent, VP Human Resources. And lastly, number 4, Government Code Section 4957, Evaluation of Employee, Superintendent President. Thank you. We're going to adjourn to closed session now. Again.
Right. I supposed to put this on?
We're going to call this meeting to order. And again, this is the regular business meeting number 9, Wednesday, February 19th, 2020 of the Pasadena City College, Pasadena Area Community College District. And we're going to start off again with the, we're going to report out on action that we just took in closed session. And this is regarding closed session agenda item B2. The board took action in closed session to authorize the superintendent or designee to issue a layoff notice to 3 classified personnel and eliminate 2 vacant classified positions. Next, we'll have the roll call.
Mr. Osterling,
Here.
Mr. Hilsman,
Here.
Ms. Brown,
Here?
Ms. Chen Lao,
Here.
Dr. Fellow,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Ms. Hua,
Here.
Mr. Sarkeesian.
Here.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I see a new member over there on our shared governance. So, Rochelle, would you be able to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today?
I think I want to pass on that today.
Okay, then we'll go right to your right, and we'll go with Student Association President Dion Shelton.
All right, Dion.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
Rochelle, sorry to catch you off guard like that. So we are having some technical difficulties today with the visual. The audio is still working, obviously, and our crack staff is working hard to see if we can get that back up again. So I'm going to need more than my usual amount of help from my superintendent to stay on agenda. Okay, so here we go. Next is approval reordering of agenda items. Is there any request to reorder agenda items?
Motion to approve.
Do we have approved and seconded to keep the agenda as is? All in favor, trustees? Student trustee first.
Aye.
Trustees?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the agenda stays as is. Next, we have introductions and recognitions, item 5. Dr. Androgianis.
Don't believe we have any.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, this is public comment on non-agenda items. Trustee Brown, do we have any?
Yes, we have 4, and I will begin, first of all, by reading our protocol, the board protocol for responding to public comment on non-agenda items. First, the board president thanks the speakers and acknowledges their freedom to speak to the board. And second, the Brown Act prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. So the first speaker we will have today is Matt Haynes. Is Matt here? Oh, there.
No.
Needless to say, you know what we have to do, right?
Yes, hello. I've been asked to read a statement on behalf of the Social Sciences Division in recognition of Lance Johnson, a faculty member in that division. On behalf of the Social Sciences Division and the Academic Senate, I would like to recognize Dr. Lance K. Johnston as he begins his 50th year teaching at Pasadena City College. Whoa. Lance K. Johnston was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and a graduate of West Gauga High School of Chesterland, Ohio. He was with the United States Air Force from 1962 through 66, received his BA and MA from Cal State Long Beach in 68 and 70, respectively. He began teaching at PCC in 1970, completed his PhD in psychology from USC in 1974, and has been a licensed clinical psychologist since 1977. Dr. Johnson has had numerous administrative roles on campus and in the community of Pasadena where he lives. After official retirement in 2007, Lance continues to teach part-time and is a favorite Psych 1 teacher. His student ratings are very high, and on Friday, the 21st of February, Dr. Johnson will teach 2 sections of the Psych 1 telecourse with 199 students each.
Wow.
Both classes are closed. We want to extend special thanks to Dr. Johnson for his inspirational teaching and mentorship. And my understanding is that on Friday, he's going to be presented with a certificate of recognition for his service to PCC.
Thank you, Matt. Our next speaker is Dale Pittman.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Executive Management, Shared Governance Groups. I'm here to speak about Paul Bizek. Those of you have heard his untimely passing on there. I joined the college in '85 as Director of Administrative Computing Services, which was renamed into Management Information Services on there.
Thank you.
Paul worked for me for 26 years on there, so I'll give you a little bit of flavor of that. He came to be the team leader for our student record systems. At that time, it was the Santa Rosa system, a consortium of 40-some colleges across the country, across the state, that is, on there. So he was a valued member to the college, maintaining the system, doing the various migrations. We went from various versions of the system to when we web-enabled it to make it more pervasive across the people on there. Background, he was part of Army Reserve for many, many years, ran a 50-kilowatt transmitter for the Army Reserve. So he and I got along very good because that was my initial field, was telecommunications, and before I went into computer systems on that. Loved to eat, loved to travel, loved his family, loved his church. It was Bethany Church on there as an elder up there on there. The attitude toward him, toward the college, and toward people was very, very good. He was kind of like a gentle bear on there. If you didn't get to know him very well on there, he seemed kind of gruff on there, but you could always count on him actually telling you what was going on, so we got along very, very well. So he worked for me for 26 years. I retired in 2014 on there. So I just want people to remember him as a valued member of the college on there, and his memorial service is up at Bethany Church on March the 14th at 1 o'clock on there if you'd like to go attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Shaganaka.
And before we go to the next speaker, we'll adjourn the meeting today in memory of Paul Bizek. And thank you for that presentation.
Alex?
It's safe to work here.
Such a nice guy.
Morning. Due to some unavoidable circumstances, I will take a break from taking the bus today. I will move that to the next month because there's even more interesting issues that I just find out today, earlier in the class. So I finally made it to English 1A class, even though some people believe that my English is still a piece of trash. My class starts at 4 p.m. and at 6:05 p.m., which is 2 hours and 5 minutes each class session, and we meet twice a week. According to the syllabus, according to the online PCC class schedules, it says total of 72 hours of lecture. But after I do my math, I have no idea how does that number 72 comes out. So every class meeting, we meet at 2 hours and 5 minutes. We meet twice a week. That'll be 4 hours and 10 minutes a week. Total of 16 weeks a semester. That'll be total of 66 hours and 40 minutes. That, please also recognize that the last week of school is final. There's no lecture there. Please remember that each class we have a break, and please remember that we have certain holidays that the school will be closed. Let's just say we include every single day, we include every single minutes that I mentioned above. The total hours I come up with is 66 hours and 40 minutes, which is I don't know where the other 6 hours of lecture goes, but at this moment, I cannot find anybody who can answer this question, so I decided to bring this question to this meeting, and I just want to know how did PCC calculate that it is a total of 72 hours of lecture? Again, this is just a curiosity question because I believe there are 6 hours are missing right there, and I just want to know, and hopefully I can get an idea or some sort of answer from someone, maybe in some mysterious future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Judy Saul.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have Mary passed this letter from my instructor. Is everybody have? I think Mary passed 7, but I count you have 9. If anybody doesn't have this letter?
Your time is moving.
Okay. Okay, today I come up with 2 requests. Number 1, I was denied by Eileen Reed for my music 38C Chinese music ensemble. The reason I cannot audit the class, I have to have a credit because 2 reasons. Number 1, I'm going to graduate in summer. Number 2, after I graduate, I need to transfer to USC, the graduate school in industry music. Last year, the spring, the gentleman approved my petition. So I don't know why this time Eileen Reid didn't approve my petition. Second reason I'm here is last semester, the Dean of Music Department removed our class from the schedule prior to school start. So they canceled the music 38C. But this semester, I put 2-hour concert video on the PCC website and the city of San Marino City Hall. Guess how many students we have? We have 13 students. So I hope the PCC won't cancel our class since our student is triple than before. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving to agenda item C7, which is to approve the minutes for our last regular business meeting, number 7, which was held on January 15th, 2020.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee vote.
Aye.
Fellow trustees.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries, minutes approved. Next, item 8, approve minutes for spring retreat number 8, which was held on January 21st, 2020. Do I
Move
hear a
approval.
motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Minutes are approved. Item number 9 is board committees reporting out. Do we have any board committees reporting out today? Trustee Martin.
The facility committee met earlier today, and I believe in front of you all is the first draft of the facility master plan. We got a similar presentation to what the board saw last meeting on what's in the facility master plan. And we had discussions with staff and the HGA architects about the best venues to potentially distribute the plan or encourage the public to get to be a part of this planning document. And the committee kind of gave the superintendent some ideas on some places, obviously one on campus and maybe some others where that might be advantageous. And that's, I think, the succinct report, unless Linda or Belinda would like to add
That
something
is
I
good
left
enough.
out.
That's good.
Well, and I would just like to add that we did encourage that we do as much outreach as possible to all of our districts, and I think that administration has agreed to do that.
Thank you, trustees on the Facilities Committee. Next, we've gone to a combined consent calendar for purposes of efficiency, and we will approve all of the consent calendar items in one. But before I do that, is there any consent calendar items that any trustee would like to pull for individual consideration? Hearing none, we're going to ask for a motion to approve consent calendar items E1 through G14.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we now move, there's one more consent calendar item, and that's consent calendar item H, which is personnel, which the student trustee does not vote on. Do I have a motion for the H personnel consent calendar items?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Trustees, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We now move to agenda item I, which is action items recommended for approval. And we are going to start with item number 1. This is resolution number 637 in support of Prop 13, Public Preschool K-12 and College Health and Safety Bond Act of 2020. And this is a proposition that's on the ballot in March or
March.
November?
March.
In March, so it's in the upcoming ballot.
So I strongly move approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We're next going to move to resolution number 638. This is in support of Women's History Month, March 1st to March 31st, this month of March upcoming, 2020.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item number 3 is authorization to transmit our second quarterly financial status report. Before we have a motion on this, is there a presentation? And how do you want to do this, Dr. Bush?
We presented it to the Finance Committee.
Yeah, I was going to just say, I should have said earlier, but we did have a finance, I'm getting some of my committees a little confused because I had about 3 of them since the last board meeting.
Okay,
But,
Trustee Martin, you have the floor. Go
We
ahead.
did get a full presentation from the administration on our position. We're pretty much in a standard position where we would expect to be at about this time. So the committee did get a full review of this, even in a format that's a little easier to understand, and the committee is certainly recommending that the board approve this.
Okay. No further discussion. Hearing none, student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next is agenda item 4. Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Endrogiannis. We're going to have one motion on agenda items I4 through I9. And do we hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on any of these MOUs? We're going to vote on those as a group. And student trustee
Aye.
and fellow trustees, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, items 4 through 9 are approved unanimously. We're now moving on to item 10, and that's to accept the tentative agreement between the Pasadena Area Community College District and the Pasadena City College Police Officers Association, also known as our POA.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
Now with 11, you need to turn it over to me.
Okay. We're now going to turn to agenda item number 11. This is resolution of the Board of Trustees authorizing the issuance and sale of its 2020 general obligation refunding bonds, and I'm told I need to turn this over to our superintendent.
So that I can turn it over to Dr. Mike Bush.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bush. Go ahead.
I have some apologies to the audience. We're going low-tech on this because we lost our visuals. I can provide people information later if you're interested in it. I can get you a copy of the presentation.
So you got you here.
Okay.
We trade you.
We ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay. Please join us. We have our finance team back again this month. We have Blake Beam, our municipal advisor. We have Ann Roline, our bond counsel, who will be explaining in depth some of the documents. She met with the Budget and Audit Committee and did an in-depth training. And we have Trennis Wright, our underwriter from Piper Sandler. And Trennis, turn it over to you to start the presentation on the structure of the deal, which is extremely beneficial to our taxpayers. And then we'll go through the legal documents.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bush. Hello, everybody. As Mike said, I'm Trennis Wright. I'm with Piper Sandler. I am the district's bond underwriter. We met with you it's close to a month now, I guess, and made a presentation then. This is a follow-up to that presentation. Some of it's a little redundant because you deal with 100 issues a month, and so we just want to bring everybody to the same page. And so we've got a quick introduction on page 1. And again, I apologize to the audience for not having this up on the screen. So basically, you have a series of bonds, which we call Series E bonds. Those bonds have an option to refinance. That option has come up as of August of last year, which is coincidentally a good time because rates have been falling ever since November of 18. So the district's in a good spot to go ahead and take advantage of that, which it has in the past, twice. Recently, at least, 2014 and 2016. We'll go over that in a little bit because that was one of the questions the last time we were here, which I believe Trustee Osterling had about what those refinancings produced. We've got a slide on that. So basically, the refinancing these bonds represents savings in future tax assessments, and we are suggesting, given the change in rates, which we'll go over, that in essence we take the maturity of this Series E bonds from 2034 and shorten it by 7 years to 2027. We'll go over why we're suggesting that and how much that produces. Again, what that will do, in essence, is because we're shorting the maturity, like you would with your mortgage, if you're going to take it from 30 years to 15, your rate's going to be a lot better, but you're going to pay a little more each year. And we'll go over that whatever that delta, that changes in that tax rate. Okay? But in essence, you're going to be refinancing these bonds. You've done it before, like we said. You did it 2014-16. That was roughly $55 million in bonds. You saved taxpayers $9.9 million in future tax assessments. This one is about half that amount. You're refinancing about half that amount, about $25 million in bonds, but you're producing about $11 million in savings. So that's a pretty good trade-off, I would think. We'll go over all the detail. This is just the opener slide. This is meant to be a dialogue, not a monologue. If you have any questions now, we can address them, but I assure you, as the pages turn, we will have the answers to your questions. So I'll turn it over to Blake.
Good evening. Blake Beam with KNN, the district's municipal advisor. As we're talking about refinancing outstanding bonds, just to get everyone oriented around, really this debt ties back to the 2002 bond authorization, Measure P, that authorized $150 million. That authorization ultimately was issued in 4 different series of bonds that were sold in 2003, 2006, and 2 series in 2009. 3 of those 4 original series of bonds have since been refunded in 2014 and 16, and we'll talk about that shortly, with the 1 remaining original series of bonds, Series E, yet to be refinanced. And so on page 2, it lays that debt profile out for the district. And at the table at the bottom, you can see of all of the bonds that were originally sold and since been refinanced, we summarize that with Series E being, again, the one original series not yet refunded that has just over $25 million of par amount outstanding. Now, those bonds were callable, which allows them to be refinanced as of August 1, 2019. And then, of course, the 2014 and 16 refunding bonds, you can see to the column to the far right, the respective par amount that remains outstanding following the refinancing and continued payoff of that debt.
Thank you. So if everybody would turn to page 3, please, unless there's any questions on page 2. So page 3 is what keeps people in my line of work up at night. So this is a graph of the benchmark rates for tax-exempt bonds. So the same way you have the Dow Jones Industrial for stocks, and you have the 10-year Treasury for mortgages, you have in our line of work, which is called MMD, which is an acronym, stands for Municipal Market Data. It's the benchmark for tax-exempt bonds. Okay, that's all this is. So if you look at this graph, we go back to 2014, right at the beginning, through present day, and we've jotted for you, and I know it's kind of scary, believe me, in my line of work it's very scary, but it shows you just how the rates have gyrated for the 30-year maturity, 10-year maturity, and 5-year maturity. So for us, those are the benchmarks we look at the most. Really the 10 years what we focus on the most, particularly in your case. But if you look at it, and you're trying to make a decision about, hey, is this resolution, should we pass this resolution? I think it was Trustee Chen Lao when we were here last time that said, hey, is this a good time to do this or not? Right, I think it was you. And if you look at this graph from just a pure rate perspective, you'd have to say yes, because rates have bottomed out. They're lower now than they were in July of 16, which is when we thought that was the bottom, the lowest you'd ever see. And they're lower than that now. All 3 benchmarks are lower than that now, I believe. Yep. So, but it's a benchmark as well, right? Because you're making a decision. We said, hey, what happened in 2014? Or where were rates then? Where were they in 2016 when you made that decision then? And as I said, they're the lowest they've ever been. They had to have been lower than then, 14 and 16, which is what this graph illustrates. So from a pure rate perspective, if that's one of your decision points, you have to say, yep, this is a good time to go ahead and pass the resolution and do this. Any questions on rates at the moment? No? Okay.
All right, I'm going to move on to page 4. Since the last time we were presenting to the board, one of the processes that we go through is meeting with the rating agencies. And what rating agencies do is they assign an independent rating, which investors then use to evaluate the creditworthiness, and it plays into the borrowing cost of bonds. It needs to be done prior to every issuance. And so on February 6th, district staff and the financing team met with Standard & Poor's and Moody's. And one of the highlights that we wanted to share, having received the Moody's and S&P ratings back last week, is Moody's upgraded the district from its prior rating of AA2 to a rating of AA1. And Standard & Poor's affirmed the district's rating at AA+. Now, I just want to take a minute to explain why that's such a positive. So you can see on page 4, there's kind of the scale of the different ratings that each respective agency uses, with the district's ratings circled there in red being right below the highest AAA rating. Now, for community college districts in California, that AAA rating really is reserved for community-funded districts. There is only one exception to that rule, and there's other components at play in that San Diego Community College District. Other than that, every other AAA is a community-funded district. It is extremely difficult for districts to secure that highest AA rating. And what it allows for is, as investors are scouring nationwide different issuances that are being sold in the muni market, they're looking primarily to what those ratings are when assessing what they're willing to purchase at in terms of borrowing costs for the issuer and return for the investor. So the higher the rating, the lower the borrowing costs, generally speaking. So Moody's and S&P go through a process for which we present a comprehensive really story about the district to these different rating analysts. And what they're focused on is assessing the district's management, the local economy and tax base, district finances, and outstanding debt. And those are weighted with management at roughly 30%, the local economy at roughly 30%, district finances at roughly 30%, and outstanding debt at roughly 10%. And through their evaluation, they scored extremely high marks to the district in several key categories. And I just wanted to go through what those are, really as some of the strong suits that they took away and shared with their internal committee. In terms of the district's minimum fund balance policy, they viewed that as a very strong management perspective that as they viewed the district, the current general fund balance in place, they expect to continue forward and be maintained through the course of that policy implementation.
Do you mean that this is the 18% policy?
Correct, correct, absolutely. Next, one of their highlights was a very strong proactive management team, really positioning the district to succeed under the state funding formula. Next, they highlighted the district's stable enrollment trend, really noting the significant out-of-district enrollment. And they noted that as not just a peak in one given year, but the continued out-of-district enrollment that has helped to stabilize and grow the district's enrollment over time. Next, proactive management of pension and OPEB liabilities and establishing the trusts and setting funds aside in those respective trusts. And then finally, a low overall debt burden with rapid payout, and that ties back to the district's Measure P bonds. So congratulations with that outcome on the rating. We certainly expect it to pay dividends as we look towards pricing these refunding bonds next week.
So, not to interrupt, but just to give it some scale, right? Not only are you just below the AAA level, but in 2009, the Moody's rating was AA3. So in roughly 10 years' time, you've come up 2 notches, which doesn't sound like a lot to you, but to us, it's very, very meaningful.
Okay, so moving on to page 5, unless I should ask, is there any questions regarding the rating? Any additional questions?
Well, could I ask one question?
Please.
The low debt burden, if we, just looking to the future, if we were to offer another bond, how would that affect our rating in terms of our debt load?
It's a good question. It's very uncommon in today's day and age for community college districts to have a single measure, and not only that, with a single measure with such a low outstanding principal amount of debt. These rating agencies look at and evaluate credits throughout the state and throughout the nation, and they aim to set a standard across all peer groups. And so there is a factor in which they'll take into consideration should a future authorization be approved by voters and debt ultimately sold from that authorization. But it's going to be a program that takes place over a period of time, and the impact of any given series would likely not be a large detriment to the district's current credit ratings. Okay. And I'll also note that again, in terms of their weighting, the debt portion of their overall scale is the lowest or smallest factor that they look at roughly 10%.
Trustee Martin.
Well, I was going to answer Trustee Hilsman and this presentation went in depth to our Budget and Audit Committee, and we spent quite a bit of time, especially with our legal counsel, but someplace along the line, our Assistant Superintendent Bush explained to us that hypothetically, if we had a new bond issuance, it could be up to about $600 million in a new bond issuance that when added to Measure P we would still be under the initial amount that the voters approved with Measure P for voted indebtedness. So when they approved, I think I'm quoting you right here, Dr. Bush, but if I'm not,
Close.
you can correct it.
Okay.
The voted indebtedness at the rate of Measure P.
At the rate of Measure P.
At the rate of Measure P.
So it'd be
would support it
$25 on top of what they're paying now,
Now,
which will be
would have
about 9.
support an extra 600 million.
Roughly, yes.
With, in essence, it doesn't work that way in these votes, but in essence, what they already approved. So.
Holdover effect on that? Is that what you're suggesting, or?
I'm suggesting, in answer to your question about a new bond, that the district has quite a bit of capability within our funding base. And obviously, this is, the people have changed since Measure P was elected, and it's a new bond, and everything's different. But the mere fact that you could get that much capacity with what has already been approved that the district didn't use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our assessed valuation is very high.
Is a very positive statement for PCC.
And just to follow quickly on this, so does the refunding and the current low rates, does that provide a more advantageous environment for a bond measure? I mean, that may be a political question, but
Well, I'll answer it from a political standpoint and an ethical standpoint.
Yeah.
We are doing the right thing for our taxpayers. We are saving them $11 million, and it's the right thing to do. That being said, we're going to retire Measure P earlier than we were planning. So there will be capacity on that tax rate. For example, if the board decides they only want the rate to go up so much, in 7 years we're going to retire a lot of debt, then you'd be able to sell more bonds to go up to that rate.
so that goes to John's point
Yes.
about the capacity.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
No, this is great. It actually ties very nicely, this conversation, into the next slide, which is page 5, which does look at the tax rate before this refunding. And what you can see, the graph at the top looks at the historical, going back to the time when bonds were originally sold. The original Measure P commitment was $23.20 per 100,000 of AV. And that's where it was close to in 2009, 2010. And for roughly a handful of years, it remained relatively close to that politically pledged amount that coincided with the 2002 Measure P authorization. And you can see in 2014, 15, and every year thereafter, it really dramatically dropped well below that $23.20. And that is what Dr. Bush is highlighting, and really this conversation about tax rate capacity, as it relates to the overall impact that homeowners would feel within the district's community. Part of the drop, yes, is due to the continued effort of refinancing outstanding bonds, saving taxpayers money, lowering the cost of borrowing. That's what's seen in the lower tax rate, greatly lower than what was originally committed from the 2002 authorization. Part of it is also out of the control of the district's hands, and it's just been a fortunate circumstance of continued and sustained growth within this tax base, really driven by market values, revitalization of certain areas, and that is expected to continue well into the future. And it's certainly something that the rating agencies really tip their hat to in assigning those very high ratings. So that combination of refinancing and the strength of the local tax base has really lowered tax rates well below what that 2002 Measure P commitment was, with the current rate in 1920 being roughly $7.20 per 100,000, significantly below the $23.20 per 100,000.
So just to drive the point home, as a real neophyte here, when a property owner gets their tax bill in the next, year or 2 years, they will see a reduction in the district tax. Is that correct? They'll see that?
If we turn to the next slide.
Okay. Okay.
You
Got
can
it.
see how there'll be a slight bump for a few years, and then it'll drop off quite rapidly. And you can see the dotted line of where it would have been and where it is now. You can see where the 11 million savings comes on the back end.
Okay, thank you so much.
And then that drops the tax rate lower at a time where if the board was to go forward with another GO bond, you would be wanting to sell more bonds in this period here.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'll turn it over to you to
Did I blow you?
Yeah, I'm not sure where that leaves us. So, yeah. So Mike covered basically page 6, which is to say, hey, if you shorten these bonds, which is what we're suggesting you do, and the reason we're suggesting that is just because rates have come so low, you can almost cut your interest rate in half by cutting your final maturity in half. So instead of paying them out to 2034, right, which is 14 years away, shorten them 7 years, 2027, you can cut your rate in half, right? So that's what we're suggesting you do. For that reason, you've done it, your refinancings, the 2014-16 weren't necessarily done that way, but the one done in 2006 was. So it's a decision you have to make. And this is what we're recommending, because it saves you the most money, because this environment is so good rate-wise, why would you, for basically a couple of dollars in additional tax per $100,000 assessed value, why would you not spend a couple of dollars in additional tax to just prepay these things and get them and retire them? I would make that economic decision. I would make that every day. And that's what we're suggesting you do. Any questions on the graph that we've all covered on page 6? No? Okay. So page 7, so Trustee Usherling, you asked us last time we were here. Look, we got to make a decision. How does this compare to what was refinanced in 2014 and 2016? This table summarizes the differences. So the one we're talking about is the one boxed in blue. So you're talking about refinancing basically $25 million in bonds. That's on line A. I'm jumped to line C because that's your 667. That's your gross rate. So to you, it doesn't mean much because you get a subsidy from the U.S. Treasury, which takes you down to what's on line D, which is 433 roughly. That's the net rate you're paying today. Your taxpayers are paying today. What we're saying is, on line E, if you shorten this thing, that's 7 years, you can drop that to under 1%. And that includes, after you finance your costs, that's everything, that's all in, right? So right now, you could achieve that, I think, all day, because we're pretty conservative when we bring this thing to the board. By shortening this to August 2027, that's your final maturity. That's when Series E would be paid off, or sorry, the refinancing bonds for Series E. You'd save $11 million. That's your basically through the term, through 2034. That's you're saving $11 million in future tax assessments. But if you wanted to say, hey, in finance, what we look at is in present value terms, in today's dollars, not future dollars. Today's dollars, what am I saving? It's roughly $9.5 million. But the number that in my line of work, in our line of work, that we look at and benchmark everything against is the number that's circled. That 38, roughly 38, 37, 38%, that is an obscene number from a refinancing. What I mean is, you're taking your savings in today's dollars, that number, that $9.5 million, dividing by what you're refinancing, which is $25 million, that's where that 37% comes from. In our line of work, that benchmark is typically 5%. So you can see from a relative standpoint of doing this every week, this is an outstanding result.
Yeah, and just to describe benchmark, when we say that, typically issuers, when they see a 5% PV savings, that would suggest that a refinancing saves enough to make sense. And there's a lot of refinancings that have been done at or around that 5% level. So when we're talking in excess of 37%, not every day do you see a refunding generate that amount of savings. And part of it is a function of just the sheer low rates in today's market, and part of it is structurally what Trennis just covered, and how we're really kind of changing the structure, shortening the term of the outstanding bonds.
Yeah, and it's not, nothing tricky, right? It's like going from a 30-year to a 15-year mortgage. Same sort of concept. Mm-hmm. But, from a decision standpoint, again, that's what tonight is about. If you benchmark this against the 2016 refunding and the 2014 refunding, I think we said at the beginning, you're saving in gross dollars as much or more on this than you did on those two. and there was twice the amount of bonds refinancing there. So just the relativities of it make this, in my opinion, a good decision to make. Anything else? Any other questions? No? Okay.
Okay, slide 8 has sort of the next step schedule of what occurs. And I know that the district board received sort of a pile of documents along with this agenda item. So along with that is the district resolution that contains the parameters of the transaction and certain not-to-exceed amounts, including the principal amount, the underwriter's discount, as well as certain good faith estimates that are required by law. And should the district board approve this resolution, then tonight, there is a printer standing by that would electronically distribute this large document. And this is what the rating agencies looked at, and this is like a prospectus. So all the potential investors, whether it's your Fidelities and Vanguards, or whether it's your mom and pops who just, there's a flight to security right now due to what's happening in the stock market, they would look at this. It contains the terms of the bonds, it contains your property tax base, it contains information about you and your terms and the district administration and their bios and the number of employees and the number of students. It contains snapshots of your audited financial statements, and it also contains the district's most recent audited financial statements for fiscal year ended 2019. So all of this would be released tonight. That would allow Trennis and the underwriters to pre-market the bonds for the next week to all prospective investors. And then next week, around February 25th or 26th, they would pre-price the bonds and then sell them. They get an early indication. Of course, they can talk about that if you have questions. And then they sell the bonds, and then the district would enter into a contract of purchase that would lock in the interest rate as of that date, which is currently February 26th of next week. Once that would occur, the County Board of Supervisors would receive your approved resolution, and the County Board of Supervisors would adopt their resolution. It's a short 2-page form that says that they will now levy taxes at the lower rate to the district's taxpayers. And U.S. Bank, who's the county treasurer's designated paying agent, would give a conditional notice to the 2009 bondholders saying, you are hereby notified that your bonds may be redeemed and prepaid so that they can decide whether to reinvest their funds. And then at that point, we would post a final official statement that has all of the final interest rates and dollar amounts locked in so that the investors who purchase the bonds can have that final official statement. And then there's a slew of documents that you will be authorizing the superintendent and the chief business official of the district to sign for the closing. So, just when you close a mortgage, there's a pile of documents and you're authorizing them, the board president, board superintendent, and the chief business official to sign, or any of their designees.
Question?
Trustee Hilsman, take it
Sorry,
away.
a lot of questions. Is there any requirement for publication of this process, other than our transparency here? I'm just wondering if there are any regulatory requirements that they be published somewhere?
Yes, so there's a securities law requirement that district officials have looked at the document and ensure that everything in here is accurate and that there are no material omissions. And then these are posted publicly at emma.msrb.org, as well as to the various entities that your underwriter will be selling to.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Trustees, any questions or comments?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Before I call for a vote, I just want to offer my own comments. This is really complicated stuff, and those in the audience didn't have the benefit because our video is down. And I wanted to thank the team again for a presentation. I know this is complicated, but your graphs really make it much more simple and understandable. And to us lay people, one simple, oversimplified way of thinking about this is like refinancing your home. We're going to save about $11 million for our district property owner taxpayers. We're going to reduce our mortgage, so to speak, from 4.33% to under 1%. And also kudos to everybody for getting our bond rating increased, because that does lower our cost to borrow. And on that specific item, I want to give some credit where credit is due. There's a lot of things that we had to do to set the table for this to happen and to take advantage of such a low rate. Not only the market, but also would like to commend Dr. Bush and your team for getting those policies in place that enabled us to get a favorable rating increase from the rating agencies. Dr. Androgenis, you and your team, when they mentioned the strong proactive management team, which is positioning the district to succeed, that's very important to the bond agencies. And to our faculty and staff. Why am I thanking our faculty and staff for a bond offering? Because the stable enrollment trend supported by significant out-of-district enrollment is a kudos to our faculty and staff that make PCC such a highly regarded institution, that we have folks coming from outside of the district, and we've been able to maintain stable enrollment when some of our peer institutions have not been able to do that. And lastly, to Trustee Martin, who has been proactive on the issue of setting up trusts for our future pension and OPEB liabilities. Kudos to you for doing that. So there's a lot of things that had to come into place, and it's coming into place right now, and we're going to be doing a great thing for our property owners, saving them $11 million and refinancing our home loans, so to speak, and bringing the interest rate down from over 4% to under 1%. And that's the end of my commentary. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll go to the student trustee.
Aye.
Well, we have to have Mary do a roll call.
Oh, pardon me. This is a roll call vote because this action requires a supermajority. So Mary, if you could do a roll call vote starting with our student trustee.
Mr. Sarkeesian.
Aye.
Ms. Chen Lao.
Yes.
Dr. Fellow.
Aye.
Mr. Osterling.
Aye.
Mr. Hillsman.
Aye.
Ms. Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Ms. Wah.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. And thanks again for your presentation. Okay, we are now going to move on to agenda item 12, which is our 2020-2021 non-resident tuition fee. And this is established per Ed Code Section 76141. Do we have any discussion or presentation on this?
Mike?
Dr. Bush?
Dr. Bush, do we have any presentation on the student fees? Or is that?
That was Dr. Levo, but I'd be happy to
Okay.
comment on it.
Great, thank you.
We're recommending that we go to the state average on the increase in student fees. And I believe there was a brief report. Was it submitted?
There was.
Yes, here as well.
It's in here.
Yeah.
So if we go to that agenda item,
I'm sorry, I don't have the.
there's not an attachment, it's laid out in the agenda item itself. If you'd like, I'll read it out.
Thank you.
Okay, so the background for this, the Ed Code Section 76140 requires each district board to establish the non-resident tuition fee by March 1st.
And we do have Olivia here who could answer any questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Do you want me to keep reading?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Based on an analysis of district costs, statewide costs, and surveys of nearby colleges, administration is recommending a non-resident tuition fee of $307 per semester, and that's in parentheses, that's $290 of tuition and $17 of capital outlay fee. This aligns with the statewide average cost. Fiscal implications, the non-resident tuition and capital outlay fees per semester for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 will be $307, $290 tuition, $17 capital outlay fee. And the recommendation is that we approve this. Any discussion or any presentation? We'll start with Trustee Wah, and then we'll go to Trustee Chin-Lau.
So I just want to know what is the delta? So what's the difference from what we had, and then how many students does this affect?
Olivia, could you come up here? We'll get that answer for you.
No worries.
Trustee Wah, could you repeat the question for them?
Yeah, so what is the change in the increase to the tuition, and then also what is the, how many students does this affect?
So I'm bringing it back up here. Hedva can provide a little bit more background on the change in the fee.
Okay, last year, the state rate which we went with was $265, so it's going up to $290. And then the capital outlay fee was $13, and it's going up to $17 per unit. Just a little bit of background, when we do a poll for all the community colleges, about 80 to 90% of the colleges uses the state rate.
And this is the non-resident fee, so for international students, we're talking approximately 800 students that will be affected, but we also have out-of-state students that are also enrolled that will be affected by the non-resident fee, and I don't actually have an exact number of that.
Okay. Trustee Wah, is that a satisfactory answer? Okay, we had Trustee Chin-Lau had a question.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Wah, for actually asking my questions. For the 80 to 90% of the community colleges that uses the state, do you know the percentage of colleges that is in the LA County area that uses the state rate?
Not off the top of my head, although I can get it. The ones around here that used the state rate was like Cerritos and Chaffee and Citrus. I don't know about LA Community College District. I think they might have been around the same rate, but I could look it up.
Okay, great, thank you.
Trustee Brown.
Just to clarify, so we do this every year, if I'm not mistaken, right? And we normally take the average of what's the going rate for the state, right? So basically, we are normally try to stay within what's going on in there. Right? Thank you.
Yeah, correct. All right, any other questions or comments from the trustees?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And thank you for answering the questions. Okay, we're moving on to Agenda Section J, which is information items. And I see item number 1 is Trustee Tuesdays, and that's by our student trustee, Alex Sarkissian, the provider of the bling tonight.
Yes.
Take it away, sir.
So I originally had a bigger presentation for this, so just if anyone in the public would like to see this presentation, my email's up on the website. I'd be happy to send this to you. I'm going to do my best to verbally explain it, but still be brief. So you may see on the packets I gave you, it is now called Trustee Thursdays. That is due to some logistical event planning that we had to change, but I'm just going to go with it's pronounced Thursdays, not Tuesdays on the agenda. So on the first page, you'll see I'm just going to be going over the objective of Trustee Thursdays, logistics, overview, sample topics, and then just a timeline for transparency. And feel free to stop me at any point during this presentation if you have any questions. So the objective of Trustee Thursdays is to introduce 1 to 3 Board of Trustee members to the student body in an informal, consistent setting. And this means that as super fun as our meetings are, I want a space where students feel that they can have, a one-on-one dialogue with trustees just about different issues in a really facilitated capacity. So as I'll go into later in this presentation, it's going to be small groups that will be headed by a trustee and a member of my ad hoc committee that will be facilitating conversation. And the kind of motto for Trustee Thursdays will be building a bridge between students and trustees. So on the next page, I just want to outline the goals for this event. And the biggest one is opening a dialogue between the student body and the trustees. And part of this came from me and Dion talked about a lot of the times we feel that we cannot represent the entire student body on issues. We only represent so many, corners of this campus. So we want you as the trustees to maybe, if you meet a student, you can be a resource to them. If they feel they want to come talk to you, they have your email, maybe you can get their contact information if you ever want to talk to them more about an issue, just to create a relationship. And the second goal is an approachable setting for students, so not a public comment, but something where they can just talk one-on-one. And finally, I want to make sure it's relevant information in a timely manner. So at the beginning of each of the Trustee Thursdays, I'm going to be going over my own role, each of your roles, so whichever of you are there, you can briefly just talk about your experience as a trustee. But I also want to make sure information that we're giving them, for example, we're talking about the facility master plan, isn't just a facility master plan, it's a digestible version of that. So students can provide input, they're not just shown numbers and figures and are like, what do I do with this? And as amazing and fun as this event sounds, we also wanted to think about how do we get students to attend. So campus-wide publicity will be a huge thing. I'm already talking to our head of PR for Associated Students, Jessica, about different campaigns and different classrooms we want to talk to. We also plan on having some great food throughout the event. Food is TBA, but it's going to be great, whatever it is. And I've also talked to some professors about extra credit, so it's just some political science professors. And I'm also going to make sure that they're just encouraging their students to attend this event depending on the topic. And finally, service hours for students who are in PCC clubs. So the head of our inter-club council, Chris Thung, and his ICC secretary, Alim, who's in the audience. So I've been working with them to talk to clubs about providing service hours for attending this event, and we'd publicize this to the inter-club council, which has weekly meetings. So at the next page, you will see an event overview. I promise this one a lot smoother with little transitions, but pushing forward. So the first date I've set aside for this event is Thursday, April 2nd, and the topic for that day's event would be facilities. An icebreaker to start off the event would be, why did you come to PCC? Which is a question I think everyone's always interested to not only hear, but students love to answer because so many of our students come from out of district, so they usually have pretty great reasons for wanting to come to PCC. It would be held in the Circadian. There'd be trustees in attendance. As you can see, I didn't want to specify any trustees, so I put Bruce Springsteen and Ruth Bader Ginsburg in there, which is what I see you as. So that's just my vision of all of you when I think of trustees. So, and as you can see in the little visual, there'd be round tables throughout the room, and at each of these tables there'd be a topic relating to facilities, for example. So that could be things like classrooms, science village, bathrooms, seating areas. And in this case for facilities, we'd have the master plan. So I'd work with the ad hoc committee, which is 5 students, and create a digestible version of the facilities master plan. Students can comment on that depending on the table they're at. And a big part of this is making sure that this event is facilitated. So at each of these tables, there would be either one of the 1 to 3 trustees in attendance or an administrator. And also at each of these tables would either be a member of the ad hoc committee I'm forming, and they will be informed about just PCC issues as a whole, kind of as a liaison to any of the trustee or administrator at the table. And if there is an ad hoc member at the table, either myself, Dion, or our other associated students, executive board would be at the table. So next I'm going to be going into potential topics. So as I already talked about on-campus facilities, and that goes into the facilities master plan. That'll be the topic of the first Trustee Thursdays on April 2nd. Next, on the next page, you'll see the next topic would be the community college transfer gate. I'm coming up with better names for these. But that would go into topic discussion, table discussions could go into, of course, why did you come to PCC, but also what has helped you move towards transferring? What resources on campus have really pushed you towards transferring? It would be around the end of April, which is when a lot of students are getting their admission decisions. So they can kind of reflect on what got them there, but also reflect on if there was anything that could have helped you get there. And at each of these tables, we talk about different aspects. So college app fees can definitely can pile up, especially if the cost of your textbooks piles up as well. And just different aspects of transferring, since that's our goal as a college. The next page is connecting careers to college. So the big thing here would be about CTEs and just workforce development. We'd have people from the Career Center here, just talking about what the Career Center does, but also this one would be a little bit more down the line, but I'd be talking to them about different resources they offer, talk to students about their awareness of these resources, if they've engaged with them. And we'd also go into how to get jobs, their interest in internships and work-based learning on campus. And then the last one I'm hoping to get to, so I've only put 4 topics down since that's all the time I'll have with these events, but the final topic will be off-campus barriers, and that'll just go into a lot of just external barriers, and that can be, as a non-traditional student, a lot of things come up like childcare, housing, paying for your rent versus paying for a textbook, but also the family perceptions of going to community college, depending on the community that you're from, or even going to college in the first place if you're a first-generation student. I also talked to Dion a lot about this, about accessibility, extended hours of service. I know that recently the computer lab is going to be staying open until midnight, so things like that, how have students been engaging with that? And also going into, though, what's life like for a part-time student? And so many of our students here are part-time students. And then going into perceptions of college and whether you're transferring. And then the final page, hope I went through this in an ideal amount of time. Final page, just for transparency, is just a timeline. So back in November, I got approval from associated students to have an ad hoc committee. Today I'm presenting. Right now, I have an ad hoc committee applications out. I hope to have my first meeting by the end of the month. And the first 2 trustee Thursdays will be the first Thursday of April and the last Thursday of April. And I'm trying to stick with that first and last Thursday just for consistency and just making it as easy for students as possible to know when the time is to talk to awesome trustees. So on the last page, I have my contact information and a cute picture of a dog. But yeah, if you have any questions or comments, I'd love your feedback, or you can email me.
Okay, Trustee Wah.
So Trustee Sarkisian, I want to applaud you for this. This is just really a great show of leadership on your part in the AS. So I do have a few comments. I really think this is not only a good show of leadership, I do think that this is an important thing to do for our students. I think this dovetails a bit with some of the discussions that we've had in financial aid and with Dr. Interjanas about how do we create a culture of student-centeredness and really creating that culture of having our students as really a student service focus. So I think that this is what I think will lead to this. So the one thing I would say, and it's because several years ago when there was a lot more discussion at the campus and it was a little more heated, I think we did the trustee coffees, and I think Trustee Brown and I did several coffees with staff. So the one thing I would want to say is because the trustees act as a whole, none of us can commit to doing something or to making a commitment without the agreement of all the trustees. And so I would just say that if the trustees participate, if we're able to go forward on this, that be clearly understood, that we set the table, we're there to maybe ask and clarify some things, but we can't make commitments to actually enact a policy without the full commitment of the board. And I think that was kind of misunderstood when we'd had trustee coffees in the past. And then I know that you had hoped that there could be some funding for refreshments, and I think that's a great idea. I hope that it's something the college could consider, because I think, yeah, we'll help draw students. So anyway, kudos to you guys.
And trustees.
Yes.
Trustee
Hungry
Brown.
trustees.
I echo pretty much what Ms. Wall had to say. I am very proud of our students and our student trustee. You guys are doing an extraordinary job, madam. And, you know, it is leadership. It's preparing for your future. And the good thing is that this was never done before. This dialogue that you're trying to make up within the trustees and the students, I think it's essential. It's good because the things that we will hear from you, most of the times we would know. You're the one here on campus every day. You're the one that's interacting with faculty. I think it's fabulous. It's a great idea. And yeah, you can call me. I'll be over. So keep up the good work. This is great.
Any other comments? Alex and Dion, sign me up for your first event.
Just give
April
him some
2nd.
time limit.
Yeah, so that was the next point. We wanted to just, send out the bat signal for whenever you are free. We gave you the first 2 dates and times, so I think we can only do up to 3 of you at a time for quorum's sake. But
Yes, no more than 3.
Yes, I know.
And Linda and Jim are both busy on Thursday, April 30th, so that date is not available
Oh,
for
yeah.
the 2 of you.
Yeah, you guys are just too much fun if there's more than 3 of you, so we have to limit the fun. So feel free to email me. I'll send out an email with these times and just let me know what time works for you so we can figure out logistics from there. But if
All
you have
right.
any other comments or feedback, feel free to email me.
All right. Hey, that was a great presentation, and thank you both for taking the initiative to get our students better connected with our trustees. I think that's awesome. And we are going to move on to information item number 2, our superintendent president's report.
Okay, so spring is open for business. Our first day was yesterday, and the good news is our enrollment is up over last year in spring, both in terms of head count and enrollment. Is that correct? I said that correctly, right? One curious part of our enrollment is looking at the impact of AB 705 on our English and math. We had greater, what we call throughput, but our success rates in fall were a little troubling, and we've seen a drop-off in students enrolling in math especially, and so it's hard to know what's happening there if they're, like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. So stay tuned on that. We're looking at that. That is an AB 705 issue. We are, our special news, actually, Alex already mentioned it, that our computer lab D104 will be open until midnight on a pilot basis. Yes, Trustee Wah, you finally got your midnight. Woohoo! And we really have to thank Candace and her team, because they're the ones who make this kind of thing happen and possible. So we have it open, and we're going to see, we'll keep track, see how much it's used, and go from there. So you got it until midnight. Since we last saw you, we have gone many places. We've gone to Sacramento to do advocacy. Dr. Bush and I went to San Francisco to meet with those fun, happy people at Moody's. And then we went to DC 2 days later and did a lot of advocacy. We had fabulous students with us. 2 of them are right. Actually, a third one is also with us. And we got to see a lot. We got to see Dianne Feinstein, we saw Kamala Harris, we saw Adam Schiff, we saw Judy Chu, we saw a lot of folks. And I think the students did an awesome job in terms of advocating on behalf of their fellow students at the college. So it was wonderful.
You might also mention who we saw in Sacramento.
Who do we see in Sacramento?
Well, let's
You
see.
can tell us.
We saw
Oh, yeah.
State Senator Portantino.
Yes, we did.
Assembly
All the
member.
way to Sacramento to see
Yeah, we went all the way
Yes,
there.
touche.
Yes. Yes.
Assembly member Holden. Anybody else?
We were at Laura Friedman's office, and we also we met with the head of the Senate Budget office, and part of that was to talk about, our talking points, but also was to thank him because he really helped us last year when we were fighting so hard to get funding for the Serafian building. So we did that too. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's okay. So we know you all saw this in the news because we love to brag. PCC ranks #1 in transfers to state universities. Yay. Tops in the CSU and 4th in the UCs. When you add those two together, we are #1 in both systems. It's a testament to everything that we do to prepare students, everything the faculty does to prepare students, everything the classified staff does to support our students and to send them off to success. And financial aid data is in for spring 2020. We distributed Pell Grants to 6,570 students this year, and that was up from 5,198 students last spring. So 1,400 more students than last year, which is an increase of more than 26%. And that total financial aid equals $6.7 million to students this spring. We are celebrating Black History Month, and that's underway. We have activities happening on, I believe, Tuesdays and Thursdays primarily for that. And several of us were in that parade on Saturday, and it was quite fun, the Black History Parade. And I had a great time. It was very fun. We have more Carnegie Lectures happening here on our campus this spring. It's the 4th Wednesday of each month at 6:30 here in Creveling Lounge. And the Carnegie Lectures are all about the stars and astronomy and all kinds of science-y things like that. Our performing and communication arts student took center stage this last month at the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. Lady Bird, A Holiday Posada was performed, and I actually saw that play back in December, and it was great. It was wonderful, and the students actually created a lot of that play themselves and acted in it. And it was at the Kennedy Center. And We Look to the Stars, which is a newly commissioned work by instructor Juhai Bansal, was performed in conjunction with the LA Opera's Eurydice Found Festival around Southern California. PCC is a destination for Art Night in Pasadena on Friday, March 13th. Don't let the 13th scare you. Programming in the Center of the Arts all evening. Congratulations to head baseball coach Pat McGee for notching his 100th win earlier this month. He's only been at PCC for 6 seasons, and that's great. And just a reminder, PCC, it will be an LA County vote center for the March election. We will have a poll in the Circadian Room that will be run by LA County election workers. It opens Saturday, February 29th through Tuesday, March 3rd. We also have other anniversaries this year, 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote, and that was a board resolution we had in December, and that's August of 1920. We were at the League of Women Voters Gala on Saturday night, and so there were even people dressed as suffragettes, so there you have it. And the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment, granting the right to vote regardless of race, and that was in February of 1870. Last but not least, I know it doesn't seem possible, but March 8th through the 11th, 2021, put that on your calendars because that is our next comprehensive accreditation visit by the ACCJC, and I am very excited to hear that announce that I begged and cajoled, and we are so lucky to have Dr. Ed Bush as the chair of our visiting team. Ed is the president of Consumnes River College up in the Los Rios district, and he is awesome sauce. So I'm very excited that I was able to get him. So
Will he be giving sort of our ecclesiastical sermons?
he may. I mean, he's an amazing public speaker. He gave a speech. Where was that? It was up in Sacramento, where it was.
Right.
We had gone to church. I mean, it was preached.
Yeah,
it was
quite
preached.
evangelical.
Yeah, that's so. Our visiting team chair is awesome sauce. So that's
great.
awesome. Okay.
Thank
I'm
you,
good.
Dr. Androgenis. We're going to move on to agenda item K, announcements, and we'll start with K1, announcements by our shared governance representatives and then the Board of Trustees. And we will start all the way over in my far right with our Student Associates President, Dion Shelton.
Hello. So, as President Erica already mentioned, that it is the first week of spring, and Associated Students has been underway with our Welcome Week. Yesterday, we shared the quad with Pathways, and we had a Lunar New Year performance at lunchtime where there was lion dancers and there was drums and performances with music, and it was really nice, and students had fun. They were able to get some Lunar New Year treats. We also have Club Week coming up next week. We have a women's event coming up in March for Women's History. We have a Food for Thought event coming up tomorrow for our lobby committee, and we also have an open mic night, which will be next Thursday in honor of Black History Month. As President Erica said, we've been busy since the last meeting. I had the pleasure of, same with Alex and David Ramirez, our Chief Justice, and Frida, our Vice President of External Affairs, to go to DC and Sacramento and lobby on behalf of the students at PCC. And it was a truly great experience, and honestly, being an advocate for the students here at PCC is probably one of the best things that I get to do as president. But yeah, it was a really good time, and I just want to say thank you for inviting us. And this spring at least right now, we are preparing for upcoming elections. So as you all know, every spring we elect our new board, and we're going to try to have 2 elections, one for our upcoming constitution amendments that we've been working hard on, and then the general election to elect the new board. And that's it.
Thank you, Dion. And a new face, at least for us here at the meeting, representing Classified Senate, Rochelle Allen.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. So the Classified Senate is in the process of this spring preparing for Classified Day, which is going to be May 22nd. So we're in the process of looking for speakers, location, off-campus locations, deciding on what workshops that we're going to have during that day. Spring is also the time where we elect a new board, so we're preparing for board elections. And before those 2 things happen this spring, the current board is looking to increase the membership to the maximum capacity that we should have as a classified senate. And we're really close to doing that now.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle.
You're quite welcome.
Management Association, Tito Altamirano.
Yes, thank you. I have a kind of a long one today, so bear with me. But first, I want to welcome Robert Lasso as the new custodial supervisor for facility services. We're excited to have him on board. And a big thank you goes to Matt Kiaman, who I believe is still here hiding behind the podium, for service to PCC. I actually served on his hiring committee as a classified employee about 11 years ago, and was happy for him and the immense progress he's made as a manager for the past 7 years. He's been a great asset to the college, and he will be missed as he's headed to bigger, though not necessarily better things. Over the course of the past months of January and February, under the direction of our Director of International Student Center, Olivia Liu, in collaboration with Pathways and Counseling, PC has welcomed approximately 135 new international students to campus. Students represented over 25 different countries from around the world, and PC also admitted and welcomed its first Saudi Arabia cultural mission sponsored student this year after an extensive process of becoming an approved community college. In addition, as Jan just mentioned, Olivia and her team, as well as our international success coaches for Pathways, helped lead a wonderful celebration for Lunar New Year yesterday, celebrating the Year of the Rat. And speaking of welcoming more students, Dr. Brock Klein, and yours truly, along with the Pathways staff and a number of colleagues across campus, have been working diligently to welcome all first-year students with the kickoff of our new student counseling workshops at our district high schools and here at the college as well. And as a means of continuously supporting our students, a big thank you go out to Manuel Cerda, as Dr. Jonas also mentioned, our Director of Financial Aid, and Ernesto Nieri, who are our Assistant Director of Financial Aid, and their staff, who as of yesterday helped disperse Pell Grants to over 6,570 students, totaling over $6.7 million, which is an increase of 26% from last year. Lastly, as part of Black History Month, I want to invite the board and members of the community to support and attend all events, including the Black Faculty, Staff, and Student Mixer here in Creveling tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and also a special showing of the movie Harriet later that night. And also next Tuesday, Trustee Osterling, while you won't be on the team, you are welcome to come out and cheer for the staff versus student basketball game, which I will be taking part in. And this does conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tito. Academic Senate, Dr. Matt Hennis.
Good evening. I will be much briefer than that. We've been fairly quiet, the Academic Senate has. We haven't been meeting during the winter, but our first Senate meeting is this Monday, the 24th. But while the break was, some folks were on break, CCLA 19 is a consortium of 19 area community colleges. They had an event, and several of our faculty went to that. And the point of it was bringing together CTE and academic faculty to encourage curriculum innovation with an eye towards preparing our students for current and future work trends. So that's kind of exciting work, and I'm looking forward to seeing what results from that. The accreditation work we're wrapping up the first draft of our self-evaluation report. I am thrilled to report that Standard 2 is completed. I have no idea.
Monster.
I and the faculty accreditation coordinator will be going to San Diego at the end of this week to attend the State Academic Senate's Accreditation Institute. I understand we will then become the most knowledgeable accreditation folks on the campus as a result of that. And just today, breaking news, we hired a flex coordinator, a faculty flex coordinator who will work with the Director of Professional Development to support faculty in various professional development efforts. And, we will also be holding our Senate elections this spring because we, for some reason, do that every year.
Thank you, Matt. That was shorter and fewer jabs at the president. Okay, we'll go to the trustees. We'll start on my far left with our student trustee, Alex Sarkissian, provider of the bling tonight.
Yes. Hello again. So a lot of what Dion was talking about, we went to some amazing conferences in the past 2 months, including the CCLC conference, Sacramento, and the National Legislative Conference in DC by ACCT. Myself and the head of our student lobby committee, Frida Ramirez, attended the Advocacy Academy workshop. It was about 6 hours, but we did learn a lot from it just in terms of how to advocate correctly, and they also did hit on lobbying as a student. So it was a really, really great academy, and we brought back the information to our student lobby committee because we will be going back to DC from March 12th to 17th for the ASAC conference. It's the American Student Association for Community Colleges, for ASAC, from March 12th to 17th, and we'll be attending that conference and also doing some advocacy as well. Just for on-campus events, we also will be having a Student Services Awareness Fair headed by our VP for Student Services, Ryan Tan. He's in the audience. He loves his fans. And that's going to be Thursday, March 5th from 10:30 to 1 p.m. in the quad. Yes. 2 p.m., my bad, 2 p.m. Whole another hour of fun. And yeah, so that's for on-campus events. Also, the Student Trustee Caucus that I'm a part of for California was voting on different legislation to support, and a big question that's come up is the student trustee vote. So as a caucus, we decided to instead push for all California Community College student trustees to have an advisory vote, because there are some student trustees that do not have that, and for compensation, and to make sure that we leave it up to the individual districts to decide whether a student trustee has a full vote. I talked a lot during that teleconference, but that's the direction they're going. And also, towards the beginning of April, there will be a General Assembly conference I'll be attending, and we'll be electing new leadership just to lead the student trustee. I believe it's the SSCCC, yeah, the student leadership for that department. So I want to make sure that the people elected there will be advocating for the right causes. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Trustee Chen Lao.
Hi, good evening. I had the opportunity to attend the talk by Dr. Pedro Noguera, who is a UCLA professor at the LA County Trustees Association meeting, and his topic at the time was implicit bias and how it impacts educational experiences. And in the most recent State of Black California report, he and his researchers found that Black and brown children actually in LA County has not progressed with their education and attainment. Instead, they're doing actually worse. And we see some of this in PCC when we look at the equity gap of our Black and Latino students, and how it mirrors the challenges in the communities of color, especially in Black and brown communities. So what he had recommended was that for institutions to assess bias when hiring, to ensure a diverse pool of candidates and hiring committees. Also to learn from examples of bias incidents occurring here at PCC and elsewhere, and promoting, seeking out, and learning from minority student successes. And what he recommended is that implicit bias is not a discussion that we have once a year or twice a year. It's a continuing discussion to address implicit bias, because we bring a lot of that with us into the workplace, and our educational experiences do not necessarily address how we look at bias. So that was a very, I think, hearty dialogue and discussion with educators in this subject. And I have one more thing to report, well, not actually report, but to remember, is that today, February 19th, is a significant day for the Japanese American community. On this day, in 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which gave the U.S. Army authority to remove civilians from the military zones established on Washington, Oregon, and California during World War II. This led to the forced removal and incarceration of some of 120,000 Japanese Americans living in the West Coast, who had to abandon their jobs, their homes, and their lives to be sent to one of 10 concentration camps scattered in remote regions of the country. No Japanese Americans were ever charged, much less convicted of espionage or sabotage against the United States, yet they were targeted, rounded up, and imprisoned for years, simply for having the, quote, face of the enemy, end quote. Every February, the Japanese American community commemorates Executive Order 9066 as a reminder of the impact of the incarceration experience that has had in our communities. And the reason that this is significant is because the first Japanese American to come out of camp was a test case to enroll in a college, chose to attend PCC. Her name was Esther Nashiro, and she was the test case and chose and then graduated from PCC.
Thank you, Trustee Chen Lao, and I would only add to your report that we commemorated Esther a few months ago
Yes.
on her passing.
Yes.
Trustee Fellow.
Some happy news that I can come to you about. Yesterday, I was bombarded by the Italian department here in a number of ways, and one was my friend who teaches here, and I've talked to her about raising money for study abroad. She called and said, "We got to get busy," and I said, "Okay." And then our lawyer came over, Warren Kessler, who's a neighbor, and he said, "Tony, I'm taking beginning Italian. It's the greatest teacher I've ever had in my life." And then I go to bed very late, at 1 o'clock in the morning, usually, 1 to 4:30. And even students can call me, my administrators call me because they can't sleep. I get a lot of work done. But I went to bed early last night, and my wife has to wake me up. I went to bed at 10 o'clock, and she came home from PCC, and she had to wake me up and shake me. She said, "I had the greatest," she said, I have an MBA, an MA, but I have the greatest teacher I have ever had in my entire life. She teaches advanced Italian. And so all day was Italian, your Italian.
That's awesome.
And I just wanted to say, we don't realize, too, that I have friends in the same class of Clara who, they're surgeons. And these kids are competing here with surgeons and doctors, and it's amazing. But, so I have to give a plug to the Italian
All right,
professors.
molto
They
bene.
are the greatest in the world. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
I wish Clara would be doing more work then. She loves PCC, especially your art department.
Thank you, Tony, for that report on our lifelong learning non-credit classes. To my far right, Trustee Wah.
Okay, well, Happy New Year and welcoming in the Year of the Rat. Yeah, you know, we've heard a lot of accolades given to our students, and I want to give special thanks to Lindsay Reed and Carrie Fusco, who both acted as the student advisors in Sacramento and then in DC. But I just wanted to say that I heard a lot of comments from other trustees from other colleges, both in Sacramento, so our California community colleges, but also in DC from other states, about how impressed they were with the leadership and the articulate, or how articulate our students were in advocating for the issues, and how quickly, you know, as we go through, we listen to the legislative issues that are at the forefront, and our students pick up on it right away, and they just get out there and they really advocate. And even when we as trustees go to see our legislators, they're used to seeing us, but when they hear the students, it just really resonates very differently. So I just want to thank our students and Dr. Androgenis for always supporting that, and to the advisors. And so two of the issues that came up, especially in DC, financial aid was always big, both in DC as well as California, but the College Affordability Act was one of the main priorities. And so I think this continues, and the Reauthorization of Higher Ed Act will continue to be sort of resonating themes as we advocate. The Financial Aid Task Force for the California Community College League 1.0 report just came out. I hope you all have a chance to read it. It's really best practices, so it's roughly 7,500 best practices recommendations that come from the financial aid directors themselves on how we knock down some of the barriers to get money into the hands of our students so that they can afford to go to college and they can pay for their living expenses. So I don't know if they started the webinar, but I know were you able to go to the webinar, Erica?
No, I didn't go to the webinar, but I know that we are trying to schedule a webinar repeat of the session that we did at CCLC in November.
Yeah, so I hope, everyone will have a chance to to hear that. And then I also wanted to, so I also attended the LAXTA event where Dr. Nagara was the speaker, and it dovetails, I think, with what the Chancellor's Office will be doing. We'll have a session in Riverside next week, and speaking on the diversity, equity, and inclusion issues that we face here in our California community colleges, and some of the hopefully ways that we can overcome that. The next speaker, or the next topic that will be coming up in LAXTA, is on mental health and how trustees can develop policies that really ensure kind of a whole student health climate throughout all of our districts. And then I also wanted to thank Dr. Androjanis at the PCC for supporting 2 events. The one was the League of Women Voters, the celebration of the 100 years of the women's rights to vote, the 19th Amendment. And then RH Star, which is the Rotary awards ceremony that's given to notable scientists and technologists, I guess. And one of them was the Carnegie Institute, who received a humanitarian award. But it's really inspiring. I know our students were able to attend. I know our Dean House was there with her professors. So I want to thank you for that support, and I think they really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Linda. Trustee Martin.
Just a brief shout out. It's good to see Dale Pittman back. Welcome back. All those years you served us, and I understand the gentleman sitting next to him is leaving us too. And
Yes,
so
he is.
Matthew, thank you for all you've been doing for us and here these years. And so I saw that go through, and I'm back there and say thank you to two great computer people that have kept us going here at PCC. And they're sitting right next to each other, so thank you guys.
Thank you, John. Trustee Brown.
Yeah, I'll have to say, we'll miss you, Matt. Helped me out more than once with my computer. Anyhow, I'll find you, although, so no, I don't have any report.
Thank you, Berlinda. Trustee Hilsman.
So just briefly, some of you may be aware that a number of us on the Board of Trustees are running for re-election, and I bring that up because it's really inspiring. One of the benefits, there's a few benefits to running for re-election, and one of them is that as I make 3,000 or 4,000 calls into the community, I realize the depth and the breadth of support for this college among our community members, who all have relatives, friends, neighbors, associates who've gone here. So we're held in high regard by the community. The other thing, to follow on Tony's comment about the faculty here, some of you may know that I taught here for a brief period of time, and then I went on and taught at, Tito, UCLA. But despite the fact of that,
No, because he couldn't get a job at a real college.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Fight on,
Anyway,
baby.
no, but you'll be happy to hear the next thing, Dr.
I wouldn't be
Androjanis.
bragging about USC right
My
now.
next comment is that the students that I had at PCC were by far and away superior to the students that I had at UCLA. I taught in the evening, and I had some of the brightest and most ambitious and most dedicated and intelligent students that I'd ever experienced as a professor. So thank you, PCC, for all that you give to us, to our students, and to the community.
Thank you, Hoyt. And I would echo your comments about our voters in our
About UCLA?
No, about the voters in our community. The high esteem that PCC is held is very rewarding. Matthew Kieman, I noticed that you were on our resignations, and thank you for all you've done for the college, but also for all the help that you've given me personally. I feel like I had a Ferrari to try to get to the corner grocery store, and he had to be scratching his head going, this guy got a degree in computer science? So thank you for your help, and best wishes on your next adventure. Sandra already talked about Executive Order 9066, and thank you for the report on that. And we've already talked about Sacramento and Washington, D.C., and what a great job our student trustees did. But I need to reinforce that. Thank you, Dion, Alex, and David. David, stand up back there in the audience, please. Stand up. Thanks to all of you and the other students that went. Our legislators do not want to hear about the issues from the boring old trustees. They want to hear about it from our students, and you guys did an outstanding job. So thank you very much. That concludes my report, and we're going to move on to item K2, which is proposed future board business meeting dates.
Yes, we'll be calling another board meeting before our next scheduled board meeting in March. That will probably be the week of March 9th to discuss some personnel issues, which must happen before March 15th.
Thank you, Dr. Androgianis. Any other requests for meetings or change of meeting dates? Hearing none, I'm going to move on to agenda item 3, proposed future agenda items. Any requests in that for this item? Thank you. Hearing none, we get to the moment we all have been waiting for a long time, and that is the adjournment. And tonight, we are going to adjourn in memory of Paul Visick, who was previously commemorated during our public comment time, a longtime PCC employee and U.S. Army Reserve. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.